I was wondering, given that you have open space in other areas, particularly near the air conditioning equipment, whether there's any possible way you could move the electrical transformers out of their present location and create an open space walkway from your interior courtyard between the buildings, so you have some kind of a visual link between the main part of the property and the park, and even a sight line to... I'm talking about that little blue square.
You're talking about this piece here?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, right now, everything in that area where you're proposing your one-story addition is at grade, and they had a swimming pool at grade, which was kind of a charming old Florida feature. Something which I'm afraid is
part of the original building.
Yeah, and a certain level of charm which we're gradually losing in South Florida. And so I'm wondering if there's some way we can at least save a vestige of that by having a vegetated pedestrian walkway minus the electrical equipment. Surely there's some other places that can tuck that ways.
Well, the big issue, and part of this can be debated, this is critical in this location where those transformers are, because a lot of the main site services come in. Yeah.
Well, I would. That's something I take rather seriously, and I hope it's something we can move. We just have so little grade level landscaped pedestrian walkways.
Mr. Norris, it's a good point. I'm glad you raised it because it's something that we discussed a great deal of the evolution of this project. You know, you're in an urban area and you're trying to hide so many things. One of the things that we're trying to hide is our loading area as well. And where that transformer happens to be is right by the loading area. It's right,
Which is that zone right
so, and the activity on that alley between the two different loading areas and being the principal entry to our garage is so active that we didn't want to encourage the pedestrian connection from the hotel to the street because we just didn't think it would work well. Because we have these buildings, we have to remember these buildings are connected through an enclosed overpass. And so from a hotel resident perspective, we prefer the internal connection to be above ground and away from where the vehicular and truck level activity is. And hence that's why the transformer ended where it was. Also because of trying to service both of the buildings, if we tried to move it west, then we'd have to come up with another transformer for the historic building in any event. So, you know, we had a couple of problems, but, you know, when you put the whole part, you know, the whole big picture together, that was the best location for it, given the location of the other uses around it.
Well, I'll just make my general statement that South Florida is becoming more urban, and the amenities seem to be placed on roofs, and the buildings tend to be built out to the limits of law, and it's a trend that I am not comfortable with.
Well, and we are, you know, this, just keep in mind as you're looking at this project, the historic hotel is a legally non-conforming building. It encroaches into the right-of-way. It has less than the required open space. So what we had to do when we came up with this plan is we had to compensate for the deficiencies on the one building on the balance of the site. So, you know, if that building wasn't preserved, then that building would be knocked down and you would have more open space on that parcel itself, and you could have more connections as you suggested. But, you know, we are here today for the preservation of that building, and it's that lot in particular, which is the non-conforming one, it's not the other one. So that's what we're trying to deal with.
Thank you.
This was briefly touched on, but we want to reinforce the advantages and the positives of this development with, again, bringing such a large development with new jobs, new sustainability, really reactivating the Lake Forest Hotel district, which really does not exist right now. You know, so by doing this and creating an active center, you know, and taking care of, you know, the $67 billion worth of, you know, tourism and economy, that, you know, we only see positives from this development.
You saw that?
Yep. Okay. Community appearance and criteria. Just really kind of highlighting, these are all the primary bullet points or requirements that we have to meet. And you know, briefly stating, you know, the project conforming with good taste and good design. You know, we feel that yes, what we're doing does do that. We're not using inferior materials or construction methods by both following the national standards as well as energy code, and a lot of the other construction methods we're looking at, we're only actually raising the bar as far as construction. Harmony within the development, and again, we've kind of gone through that with the design, and we definitely say that this does meet those, in some cases exceeds those requirements. And then compliance with section 23.2.29 site design, you know, we say that it does comply as well.
All right, and if you want, Mr. Chairman, we can stop here if you want us to, so that staff can catch up, since you haven't staff hasn't gone over these, or I can just continue to, whatever your pleasure is.
This is part of the site plan request. These are the waivers that you're requesting from the site plan.
That's correct. That's why we felt you may want to hear about that, this portion of the agenda.
Do you want to make any comments?
Well, we did mention them. We mentioned both of them, the one for the addition for the hotel and the one for, that includes multiple parts, for the new hotel. I do want to try to clear the record a little bit, is that without the addition being proposed, if the hotel stood on its own, it would be a conforming structure except for its colonnade when it comes to site care coverage and open space. Just to clarify that and make sure that I'm hearing some rumblings in the back that we didn't bring that to the attention of the board, so I'm doing that.
If I can elaborate, however, the hotel would not be able to sustain itself because it doesn't have the typical amenities.
And there was an addition there.
So in any event, we're here to, we did a couple of waivers. This is to allow a maximum front setback of 22 feet for the proposed hotel along Lake Avenue, where 17, a maximum of 17 is required, and I know that Aaron wanted to see this. So there are a couple of reasons why we're asking it. First of all, again, we're trying to, your preservation requirements require not simply rehabilitation and preservation of a building structure, but actually a rehabilitation or restoration of the use itself. And under any standards today, future standards, this hotel that exists in the configuration that it exists would not be considered a hotel that a Class A hotel. It would probably not even be considered a Class C hotel.
Student housing.
That it might be, hate to say, drug and rehab, it might work just fine for, but we don't want that. So what we had to do here to restore the use is we had to come up with this addition that provides the back of house opportunities that are needed for a hotel to survive. So that is the addition, and I know that Tim spoke a little bit about it. So with the addition, to make this use viable, we did not have sufficient open space. And so we had to compensate for that on the upper site. Part of that area is located here. But that's one part of it. The second part of it is that our goal with this building is to magnify it. It's to put it out there, to highlight it. And so one of the principal vistas of this building would be coming as you're traveling eastbound heading towards the beach. And if we moved, and this building could have been moved forward, but if we had moved it forward, you would take away from the majority of what makes this building so special. So your criteria looks at location, the relationship between the buildings. It doesn't, and it doesn't ask for them to be the same. It asks for them to complement each other. So by pushing this building back, we give this building the chance to be the star that it's intended to be for the city. It's the jewel on this overall development. It's the beginning, and these are just second thoughts, to be truthful. This is what it's all about, and this is what we were trying to do, highlight this building. And if this building was pushed back, it would not be highlighted. It would be partially lost. So that was the second reason. And then finally, the third reason, again, the relationship of the buildings between each other. And I have to go back too far probably, but let me see if I can get back to this. That'll help. So these are H-type buildings, as Tim had mentioned. This is also following the same kind of, it's kind of a modified H-type building. So while this faces north, for variety, this actually faces in the easterly direction, but it's the same type as far as the building configuration. And in order for the center to have some type of prominence, we have this one-story break here. If we push the building up, this break would be staring at this side wall of the building. So by shifting it to the south, we give this building an opportunity to make its own statement and to have its own prominence there. And that's the other reason that we felt it was important to line the buildings up in a way that they complemented each other, didn't conflict with each other. Moving it this way, this building conflicts. Moving this way, this building conflicts with the vistas of this building. So there was a rationale to it. And then finally, I'm not even sure I needed to ask for the variance, but we did, because remember that these buildings are connected. So this building certainly meets the criteria and is connected to this building as an expansion of this building, but to be overly cautious and to not leave anything for questions, we applied for the variance. But we believe that we have met the criteria for the
It's a
variance.
waiver, right?
It's a waiver,
It's a
pardon me,
waiver.
I misspoke. So anyway, that is the basis for how we position the buildings, and we feel as though we did so.
By design.
By design, and actually in an effort to meet some of the other standards within your certificate of appropriateness. All right, so then, moving to the next one. That we just talked about the maximum front. We're required to demonstrate that it's in harmony with the general appearance and character of the neighborhood. I just talked about how the buildings are in harmony with each other. And that yellow line that you saw before in the other drawing, we also feel that it's in harmony with the balance of the neighborhood. The property is designed and arranged in a manner that minimizes visual impact. That's what this is all about. We're trying to minimize the visual impacts that would of the potential conflicts if we pushed it up to the street. The waiver or modification is not injurious to anyone. In fact, it's to the benefit of the overall site to shift the buildings a little. And it's the minimum necessary. I think, by the way, my H drawing, the way it's been aligned, we did exactly what was needed, nothing more, nothing less. So that was the first waiver. Waiver to allow a setback of 1 foot for the addition to the Gulfstream along Gulfview where 10 foot. So this actually is a result of the fact that the historic building actually is sitting in right of way. Because the building it's crossing over and it's way over here. If we push this building back this way, it wouldn't flow with the main building because this is so far out here. So we stepped it back, but we wanted the promenade, the covered arcade, to wrap around the building and look like it was planned, not it was an accident. So if this building, in fact, was on the property, as it might have been if it was done today, we wouldn't have this problem. But because of where this building extends out to, this is why we're at 1 feet and not at a greater setback. So that's the second waiver request, and you can see the areas that I'm highlighting. Okay.
I agree with your setback on the new building, because the Gulfstream can be seen at some distance. And I remember a previous proposal for this site which lined up the setbacks precisely, and it hid the Gulfstream. I remember mentioning it in this very room and having a board member, frankly, somewhat put me down for the notion of setting it back. So I'm glad to see you have it in your plan.
Thank you. We think it was a tasteful approach to buildings that complement each other. And, you know, again, our goal is to highlight this building. It's special. You know, there are only 2 others in Palm Beach County that are closely remotely like it. So we felt to hide it would not serve anyone any benefit. So,
Can you show the space exactly on, first,
this is the golf view. This is looking at the east side of the building, or you're looking west. So this is the east side of the building, of the existing historic building. As you can see, the promenade wraps around.
Right.
So the 1 foot setback, and again, this yellow line is, I think it's
It's
the
property line.
property line. As you can see from where the line is, the historic building extends over the property line. It's an existing condition. It's been here since it was constructed. So what we're proposing is the addition, obviously not cross over and make the same mistake, but not be so far back that it doesn't look like it was intended to be an addition to the historic hotel. So we pushed it 1 foot off. There's still, it doesn't interfere with any of the activity or what would be going on here as far as sidewalk or on-street parking. It will look, if you're looking at Gulfview, if you're on Gulfview and you're looking west, it will look as if it was designed to do something that it hadn't been designed to do. So we feel that that was the right way to go.
So the dumpster access is going to be by truck, they're gonna pull it out on the curb, or how's that going?
Dumpster pull out.
Yes.
On that.
No, there's 2.
Yes, for the historic building, the dumpster access is actually right here in this corner of the addition.
So,
Okay, so the colonnade actually do, the hardscape facade, again, is set back another 8 feet or so from the edge of the colonnade, and I've got a elevation that kind of shows that.
so is the truck gonna pull up to the dumpster, or is the dumpster gonna come out to the truck?
In this case, the dumpster would come out to the truck, okay? In this location here, the truck would literally come up, grab it, empty and go away.
So there's gonna be a watertight dumpster there, or?
It's, which one? The one that's,
On Gulfview?
this one? Yeah, this one down here?
Yes.
Actually, because it's actually undercover, so it is actually tucked under the roof.
So it's gonna be watertight,
Yes.
because there's gonna be leakage onto the sidewalk,
Well, it's contained in its own nook, so. we have
until you drag
drainage
it out over the sidewalk.
Until we drag it out to the side.
So
Yes.
is that a reasonable condition that it be watertight? I mean,
Yes.
because I don't like it.
Take note too that, the little comment, sorry, one thing that'll have to be adjusted is that these parking spaces existing will need to move
Yes.
over, and this
We're
area here will
that.
shift over to provide access to the
the truck.
dumpster.
Yes. We thought for simplicity's sake, we just leave it as the conditions, with the parking. Yes, we're in agreement with that.
Okay, me again. Also on your agenda this evening is a request for demolition. On the actual site, there are 2 buildings, a 2-story building, which we're looking at right here, which we believe is perhaps a 4-unit building. They haven't been occupied in a very long time. And then there is an ancillary 1-story building directly behind it. This, you may remember, I don't know if you happened to be at the meeting, but several years ago, there had been a request, I think maybe it was in 2006? 2007. Oh, okay, it's on there, yes. This request had previously been approved. The condition of the properties in 2007 was not even salvageable. And so the board agreed and approved them to demolish them. It's worse today. Nothing's happened since then. So there is nothing salvageable, but there are standards, and I'm going to quickly go through the criteria. Is the structure of such an interest or quality that it would reasonably fulfill criteria for designation as a landmark? The answer is definitely not. Is the structure of such a design, texture, craftsmanship, size, scale, detail, unique location or material that it could be reproduced only with great difficulty? And as a matter of fact, that two-story house, you will see many other versions of it. I'm going to give you, I think, one version of it in the future and the surrounding area. So there are many of them, so the answer would be no to that, here they are. Is the structure one of the few remaining examples of its kind in the city? We just picked two, but there were many more to choose, so we believe the answer would be no there. And would retaining the structure promote the general welfare of the city by providing an opportunity to study local history? There is no real cultural or heritage significance to the buildings that were requested for demolition back in 2007.
And that's provided by staff, not by you.
Actually, these are comments that I have. I think staff thought, and I don't want to speak for you, but I think you thought that the two-story building may have been able to have been relocated. And I'll talk to them about that in the end. And does the permit application propose demolition, new construction? Yes, it does. We've gone over the new construction. Will the new construction be compatible? Yes, we've talked about that. What effect will these plans have on the character of surrounding sites? The demolition of the buildings will have zero impact on any of the surrounding property and will enable the construction of the new construction and the rehabilitation appeal. And would granting this be irreparable loss? Again, there are other examples of these buildings elsewhere in the city, and these are in such poor quality they could not be relocated. I would like to respond to I think the staff comment about the potential for relocation. If you went into these buildings, the only thing that really is potentially salvageable, and I say potentially loosely, would be actually the walls. The floor's gone, the ceiling's gone. If you look at the roof, you actually see starlight when that wasn't intended, and they aren't the fake stars that glow in the dark.
I think we're probably familiar with those.
Okay, so it would be impossible to relocate the buildings because there's just not enough structural integrity for them to survive a move. But finally, I think that covers. Is the building or structure capable of reasonable economic return? I just described why not. 9, would denial or of demolition result in an unreasonable economic hardship? Absolutely. We could not do the annex, which would make the rehabilitation of the main historic hotel impossible. So the answer would be yes. 10, does the building or structure contribute significantly to the historic character or historic fit of the designated historic district? The answer is no. Again, there are many examples of this. It is not a special architecture that you cannot find elsewhere in the city. Has demolition of the designated building or structure been ordered by an appropriate public agency because of unsafe conditions? The answer is no. However, if they entered onto the property, the answer would probably likely be yes. So I think that reasonable measures been taken to save the buildings.
What was the last?
Yes, I missed that. They are boarded up right now. So I think that covers it. And then if it's okay, we'll continue on to the C of A at this point.
I'd actually like to hear some testimony from Ivani on the variance related to the utility.
That's,
Unfortunately, because of time, we actually deleted that section.
Yeah, we don't.
That's the one thing because I'd like to hear kind of your backstory and because the variance to me is the most significant portion because of it goes for the land. So
I don't want to slow them down, so I know we do have to cover this. Would you like me to start and then I'll follow right
that's
after?
fine.
Okay.
Whatever you're comfortable with.
Okay. So. As part of the certificate of appropriateness, this section really focuses on restoration and rehabilitation of the original building. Okay, so since we are following the guidelines of the National Park Service, which we do very stringently. We take that very seriously. And a lot of, over the history of this building, what we found is changes that have been made to the building by other people or other developers that did not take into consideration really any of these standards, methods of construction or detailing. We will be following those guidelines. As an example, one of the requirements, or a couple of the requirements, is, will the historic character of the property be retained? And the answer is absolutely yes. We are making every effort to where we physically either connect or, well, basically where we physically connect to the building, to do that as lightly as possible, as well as following standards and guidelines where those connections happen are not on primary views, okay, or accesses. So along the north elevation, that you see here, I mean, really there is no change to the design or features of the building, other than going through, and what we're talking about that has been done is replacing the current windows that were done, I don't know the era, probably within the last 20 years.
Did you want to hear any more? What are you calling?
For the certificate of appropriateness for the interior service, I'd like to actually just hear you, just very quickly, just summarize
Okay.
what you're doing, the actual changes that you're doing. So we're familiar, I think that
Absolutely.
we're familiar with the interior
Yes.
standards, so I think.
Okay. Broad brush things that we are doing to the building is where we have found areas that have been either modified incorrectly. We will go back, again, provide correct materials, save and salvage, again, the original documented ornamentation around the building, where we found really only a few locations where the skin of the building was really damaged.
It looks like it's in good shape.
It is actually phenomenally, with a little bit of use over the last 10 years or so, and it being structured 90 years old, it has actually held up very, very well. So both exterior and interior features, we've also known, somebody made an attempt to, replace the clay tiles, although the method in which that was done was wrong. So we'll go back, fix that. Again, deteriorated historic features, some of the items, just briefly, some of the original fixtures that we do know that exist will be refurbished, rewired in this. Again, damage that we're seeing within the context of the building envelope will be correctly repaired and replaced. This is actually really critical because it is something that people who do this type of work that don't know what they're doing can actually do more harm than good.